Satimya Santitoja Nashta Presho Vajreshu Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashuki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki Nigama Kapadurgaritam Padam Shukamakara Midam Dravitamitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rashamariyam Mahora Hora Sikh Bhavibhokam Krishna Swadama Bhagate Dhammagini Isha Karunashta Dushamasha Parana Kodinodidam Twamapiya Dabashuta Vishutam Bibu, Samapia Navidam Bedukusaram Pragahido, Mahodamam Sanklation of Adamusanti Nanyatam. And Arto Bajamam Shakshad Bhakti Yogam Lokashijanato Chakri Satvadasamitam. O Maganati Miranda Shanganangana Sadaka Chaksur Meditam Yanatashmai Sri Gurvanamaha. Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparadikam. Vandeham Suguru Sriyuta Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sa Sri Rupam Sagaram Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shubhishikan Vitam Scha Om Maganati Marandasya Ganagana Saraka Chaksurun Mididam Yanutashma Shri Guravedam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. There's our third in a three-part series this week, Wisdom Wednesday. Thanks for joining, Rob. Thanks for joining Leelavati. We've been talking about the qualities that attract Krishna. One of them is mercy. The quality of mercy is not strained, droppeth like the gentle rain upon the place beneath. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. No, indeed, Krishna's mightiest quality, most attractive feature about Krishna is the fact that he extends mercy. Mercy means we get something we don't deserve. So we don't deserve to get Krishna's association. We've basically been pretty conscientious, quote unquote, about ignoring him, keeping him at arm's length for many, many lifetimes. And yet he never backs away from us. He never repays us in kind. We step away from him. He doesn't step away from us. He remains constant, faithful, steady, unerring, consistent, determined. He has all the qualities which we lack. So eventually, it's probable that will come after who knows how many lifetimes to a point of realizing that we're not getting anywhere in this material world. We're just chewing this chewed. Same eating, sleeping, mating, defending over and over. Sometimes it's in the body of a demigod, sometimes it's in the body of an ant. But the same pleasures are there: eating, some little sliding over the tongue, mating, some stimulation with the genitals, sleeping, and defending. The 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 rush, the adrenaline from pitting yourself, clashing with somebody else, and hopefully coming out on top. We do this over and over again, from the highest planet to the lowest planet. They're the same basic appetites, same basic sensations, repeated over and over again. Examples given: milk is milk. You can drink milk from a golden pot, or you can drink milk from an iron pot, but the taste of milk is the same. So whether you're passing semen as a demigod in a heavenly atmosphere, or whether you're passing semen as a pig in a mud pit, the same sensation, the same concentrated pleasure, so-called, is there. It's short-lived. It gives rise to anxiety, sadness, competition. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire, which causes the fire to blaze up even more brightly. Whatever disturbances or tension or anxiety were surrounding the original effort to satisfy, to quell the urging of sex or the urging of food. Once you satisfy that urging, it comes back. The satisfaction is there for a short period of time, but then it comes back even stronger. It's often described that we're in the fire, the forest fire of this material world, and everything we do to try to ameliorate things just aggravates it. It compounds our problems. Devi Krishna says, on your own, it's impossible to overcome the power of material nature. It is insurmountable. No living being, including even Brahma or Shiva, is immune from the alluring and trapping effects of this material nature. It's created just in such a way as to capture us in its web. But those who can be released by Krishna's grace are those who exhibit, first of all, mercy. And in extending mercy to other living beings, one of the things that they do is follow in the footsteps of Krishna. Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he canvassed out in the public. He did Sankirtan, chanted publicly Hare Krishna, and encouraged his disciples to do the same thing. His own brother Nityananda, who's none other than Balaram, as well as Haridas Thakur, went as a couple, as a pair, just like the Mormons. They go out in pairs. Swami Narayan sannyasis, they go out in pairs. So similarly, the chief pair missionaries of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were Nityananda and Haridas Thakur. And based on the order of Lord Chaitanya, they went door to door in Bengal. As soon as people opened the door, they would fall flat like a step, cross the threshold, say, please chant Hare Krishna. Please chant Hare Krishna. So the devotees who are going to attract the attention of the Lord, those who show mercy, those who are going to attract the attention of the Lord are going to be happy. There's no sense in being in a spiritual movement, celebrating the eternality of the soul, the blissfulness of the soul, the luminosity, if that's a word, of the soul, and having a sour face. If you recall the gospel, the message of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, never was there time when neither God exists nor you nor all these kings are in the future, so that it would cease to be. Now, if that doesn't bring a smile to your face, I'm not sure. You may have incurable depression if it doesn't curl up the corners of your mouth upward upon recollecting that I'm eternal. The pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age don't actually affect the real me. The result of Krishna consciousness is become happy. One time in Australia, someone asked Prabhupada, what do you Hare Krishnas do for recreation? Prabhupada had him repeat the question. Say what? What do you Hare Krishnas do for recreation? Prabhupada said, it's all recreation. What part of it is not recreation? We're singing and dancing before the sun rises up, discussing the highest philosophy, the philosophy of the absolute truth. Nowhere but in Krishna temples or amongst Krishna devotees do you get such high-level discussions on a daily basis. Nowhere. Nowhere. Prove to me I'm wrong. Tell me anywhere else in the world that you'll discuss the soul, the origin of the soul, the supreme soul, the relationship of the soul to the supreme soul. Tell me any other forum in the world where these topics are discussed seriously, authoritatively, on a daily basis. That's my challenge to you. I dare you. I dare you. And the fact that majority of people come, listen, walk away, don't take it seriously, takes nothing away from the gravity, the portentousness, the revolutionary potential of such topics. Doesn't take anything away from the topic. It simply is a sad commentary on modern society in this Kali Yuga. In any case, mercifulness, joyfulness, bliss at practicing Krishna consciousness, putting yourself right in the middle of who you were created to be, who you are as an eternal spirit soul. And then in the course of going out and canvassing, spreading the good news, creating others' good fortune, there has to be tolerance. As we said, not everyone appreciates Krishna consciousness, especially in this Kali Yuga age. Lord Jesus Christ, all he was doing was delivering the good news of the soul. And the backlash was such that they nailed him, hands and feet, onto a cross, ridiculed him, Haridas Thakur, for no other fault than chanting Hare Krishna, was beaten 22 marketplaces. In order to be a representative of the Lord, in order to be Krishna's man in public, you have to be tolerant. You can't expect that things are going to change very rapidly. I remember when I first heard the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it created such a dramatic change in my life. I had a little tendency towards depression in those days. And I've been traveling to India. I've been traveling all over the Middle East, Southeast Asia, ultimately Australia, Bali. But there was always about me, I believe, an aura of depression, mild, just mild depression. And when I heard the philosophy of Krishna consciousness from Upendra, who was the first devotee I met, there were very immediate and dramatic changes towards my outlook, my worldview, my attitude. Such a turnaround it made in my own life that I fully expected that when I would join the devotees and go out on Sankirtan, distribute literature and chant, in my naivete, I thought the whole world would be Krishna conscious within 6 months. I was just judging everything by myself, by the positivity that had created my life. And I said, why would anyone not want this? And I'm here 55 years later, and I don't know the answer to the question why people would not gratefully, willingly, enthusiastically, upon the first hearing, embrace the elements of this philosophy. I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know it's true. It's sadly true. Most people, you tell them who they are, what their purpose in life is, why it was they're created, the path back to an eternal life of bliss and knowledge, and they're like, meh, meh, to go play a video game. Or I'll scroll. Agni Day we were talking about parenting yesterday. Agni Day's gone off to Bombay for 3 weeks. So we were talking about parenting. And I was explaining I never had kids because I don't think I could bear the fact that, after pouring into your child, pouring love, pouring anxiety, wanting to protect your child, wanting to give your child the best thing that you know, Krishna consciousness, and then to have the child grow up and just reject all of that and walk away. I don't think I could bear that. And so I never took the gamble of having children. And Agni told me about his children. He has 2 twin girls and 1 boy. So the girls are still, they're fairly Krishna conscious. They go to temple on special days. They like to talk about Krishna. But of his 3 children, the one he spent the most time with was his son. They would sit and read Krishna book together for hours and hours. They would do kirtan. He poured the best of himself, the best that he knew, the best that he could hope for his son. He poured it into his son. And then his son went to college and ended up with a very good job, wife, and lives in Portland, Oregon. But the son is not, there's no interest in Krishna consciousness. After all that Agni poured into him, there's absolutely no interest in Krishna consciousness. Agni had a heart episode in Australia, a surgery. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks, hovering between life and death. So his son, who does love his father, I mean, truth be told, his son loves his father, flew to Australia and brought him back to Portland and insisted that Agni spend a year with him, during which time he would recuperate. And it was tough. Agni said it was tough because his son's not into Krishna at all. In every room there's a TV, and what his son is into is sports. So as you go from one room to another, all the TVs are ESPN. All their conversations in the home are mundane. All their friends, when they have a social occasion, it's mundane. Agni felt like he was dying. He was dying of starvation. during that year he was living in the house. His only respite was he would just go for a walk and chant and listen to talks by Prabhupada. He shared with me that his son said to him at one point, "Dad, seems like I've lost you." And he said back, "No, I've lost you. I so much wanted, pray, work for you to be Krishna conscious, and there isn't a shred of interest in Krishna consciousness in his son." So one has to be tolerant. One has to be prepared to shed blood. Prabhupada said to make a devotee, you shed blood. And to lose a devotee doesn't mean you haven't shed blood. You don't get the blood back. If you pour into someone months and years, whether it's a new person who shows interest, who's inquisitive, or whether it's your own offspring, you can literally open your wrists and shed blood, try to make that person Krishna conscious, but there's absolutely no guarantee that they're going to reciprocate. Therefore, the other quality, if you're going to show mercy, if you're going to happily and joyfully go out and share the good news and encourage the lifestyle, which is eating, prasadam, kirtan, discussing philosophy, it's all blissful. There's nothing burdensome about the elements of worshiping Krishna. It's all recreational, as Prabhupada said. So you have to be tolerant. You have to be prepared that someone will just take everything that you have to give and then just walk off. Good example of that is there's a local girl, I won't make any names. She's been coming to the temple in Salt Lake City for about a year or so. And when she first came, it was like a drowning man, a drowning woman being pulled onto the boat. She was so grateful, so happy. She'd had some experience with bhakti, but the practitioners weren't pure. They weren't pure practitioners. They were sentimentalists. And so she didn't get the real philosophy. And how happy she was to land at the temple and get a nice, consistent worldview from any number of devotees. Doesn't matter what Christian temple you go to in the world, you get the same philosophy, exactly the same. So you could see she became enthused. This is the real thing. She had been exposed to the artificial thing. Now she got the real thing. She did a lot of service, so on and so forth. And then I have to be fair. She went off and she got initiated, but doesn't do any service in the temple. Had made connections with devotees in Washington, D.C. and devotees in Florida, spends thousands and thousands of dollars to go to devotee retreats in Costa Rica and Mexico and so on and so forth. Went off and got initiated without having gotten a local recommendation. And the first thing she does when she gets back after initiation is she cancels her $50 a month donation to the temple. That's the first act after initiation. So it hurts a little bit to have poured so much in and been rebuffed in that way. But it's okay. You get used to it. You get used to it. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the main qualities of success in devotional life is to work as you're obligated, work as you're instructed to do by your mentor, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and your spiritual master. Use your talents and abilities to try to spread Krishna consciousness. If you're a musician, use your music. If you're a preacher, a communicator, use that. If you're a book distributor, use that. If you organize festivals, use that. Try to be part of the outreach program. But at the same time, don't be attached to the fruits of the result. Got to know up front that you can pour into people, pour into people, pour into people, pour into people. And rather than be grateful, rather than to be appreciative, that you're concentrating years and years of practice, years and years of experience. It's literally centuries and centuries of knowledge passed down through this session to you. You've studied it, you've learned it, you've memorized it, you've practiced it. When you have I remember I had Achilles tendonitis a long time ago when I was running marathons. And they wanted to see if surgery was feasible. So they made an appointment with this doctor. He was a famous surgeon. forget what his name was. There were several brothers, and they were all well-known surgeons from Springville. So I had an appointment, and I waited in his office for half an hour. So he went in. He took one look. He felt it. There was a little lump on my attendant, some scar tissue, and he just felt the lump. He said, "Does that hurt?" I said, "Yes." And then he scheduled me for surgery. Okay, and my insurance was covering it. But I happened to look at the bill for that one consultation. It literally lasted like 30 seconds. It was like $300. He that hour, he probably saw, 5 or 6 people at $300 a pop. He made $1,500 an hour. So, you'll go to see a surgeon, a man who's gone to medical school, who's trained up under other surgeons, who's learned the practice of surgery, of the practice of medicine, and we don't think anything. We acknowledge that his time is worth $300 for 30 seconds. There's nothing criminal. No one is going to cry foul that he's done that. That's pretty much not a surprise, because after all that he's invested, we feel he's entitled to some recompense, some respect, some consideration. And yet a devotee who's been practicing Krishna consciousness for 50 years, they'll take somebody under their wing, they'll share with them, they'll make them familiar with all the stories of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, they'll introduce them to Narada Muni, to Dhruva Maharaj, to Prahlad Maharaj, give them the potency, connect them to the live wire of the disciplic succession of which they're a current representative, only to have that person say, "Thank you very much. Now I'm going to go continue with my search." Or I heard about this guru over here. I heard about this person over, or even within ISKCON, "Oh, I don't care for the local temple that made me a devotee, without which I wouldn't be where I am. But I'm going to key on someone who lives 2,000 miles away. And rather than give $51 a month to the local temple, without which I wouldn't be where, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 times a year, $2,000 or $3,000 to go on a retreat to Costa Rica." So what's my point? I'm venting this morning. It's all good. It's all good. So what's my point? You have to be merciful. You have to extend yourself to others out of a genuine feeling of compassion. You have to do it blissfully and joyfully. You can't preach with a sour face. I remember one time we had a devotee back when we were in the log house before we built this temple. It was a devotee named Balabhadra. We're still in touch with him. He's up in Boise, Idaho. But he would give the Sunday feast on occasion, and oh my God, you just wanted to cry. He'd talk about the 4 regulative principles: illicit sex, gambling, intoxicating, no meeting. How hard it was to follow those principles, how everybody was engaged in those activities, and all the billboards and all the newspapers and everything you saw encouraged you, and you had to put your foot down. You had to steel your resolve. And you would hear his talk and just want to go away somewhere and cry. I said, "Balabhadra, there's no way that any new person would ever be attracted to take another step in Krishna consciousness, because all you do is bring out the negatives. You're just crying a sad song. Krishna consciousness is blissful. Have fun with it. It's joyful. Um, and it's not that you experience the joy after many, many long years of practice. You walk through the door the first time, it's joyful, and you should have a joyful experience. So mercifulness, happiness, and then tolerance. You have to be able to put up with a lot. You have to do your job. You have to preach. You have to love preaching or music or book distribution, whatever it is, and just be completely detached. Sooner or later, those people will come to Krishna consciousness. You can be enthusiastic. You can keep discouragement at arm's length, knowing that having gotten some prasadam, having gotten a book, having gotten input and teachings, they will go back to Godhead sooner or later. That's the message of Gajendra. Look at Gajendra. He was out of Krishna consciousness for 1,000 years. He had been cursed to take birth as an elephant. And even though in his previous life it was 99% Krishna consciousness, um, he literally was put in such unfortunate circumstances that he didn't give a thought to Krishna for 1,000 years. But Krishna gave a thought to him. He didn't think of Krishna, but Krishna never forgot him. And eventually, at the right time, Krishna sent the crocodile to latch onto the leg of the elephant and awakened his consciousness of a previous life. I think I'll take this opportunity to review first Gajendra's prayers. Gajendra, king of elephants, in danger's grip, his mind stripped of arrogance, his history unzipped, recalled mantras from a previous life, cut away his attachments like a knife. Formerly King Indradumna, now in elephant form. Yet his prayers echoed, weathering the storm, mantras resurfacing from the past, transcendental sound, awakening memories profound. Even a devotee falls from the path, Krishna heart keeps track. At the right time, he'll take up the slack. He'll carry what you lack. He will get you back home, back to Godhead. Krishna, the cause, the result, the witness supreme, transcendental, the stream, unseen behind the material screen, the life in the machine. Lord of all might, give me protection, guide me through the darkness up to the eternal light. Even if a devotee falls from the path, Krishna, the heart keeps track. At the right time, will take up the slack. He will get you back home, back to Godhead. Krishna, you're the preserver, the transcendental observer, above this creation, aloof like the sun. And yet with your energies, you bless everyone simultaneously, one apart with this, simultaneously apart from this world and one. With your multipotencies, you manifest your will, create this universe, your purpose to fulfill. And when it's time to end, you absorb it all back like a spider retracts its web into its sack. Even a devotee falls from the path, Krishna, the heart keeps track. At the right time, will take up the slack. He'll carry what you lack. He will get you back home, back to God. Chant Hare Krishna, the Maha mantras call. In this life or the next, it will never fail. Once it's sown, the bhakti kripa will grow. Sooner or later, you will go back home, back to Godhead. Even if devotee falls in the path, Krishna, the heart keeps track. The right time will take up the slack. You will go back home, back to God. But we can always be enthusiastic that even though people don't necessarily visibly or immediately respond to our outreach, the seed has been sown. They may forget Krishna. They may be in a state of deep forgetfulness of Krishna, but Krishna never forgets them. And he will bring about those circumstances in the future by which their dormant Krishna consciousness will be revived. In the meantime, you have to be tolerant. There's a story about Prabhupada distributing back to Godheads in the 1940s or 1950s back in India. And Prabhupada is already an elderly, very distinguished man at that time. He's wearing the robes of a sadhu and tilak on his head. And the natural tendency in India is to respect people that are dressed that way. There are many people that are dressed that way who smoke cigarettes and are rascals and charlatans. But no one would ever look at Prabhupada and entertain the shadow of a doubt about Prabhupada. Everything about Prabhupada exude purity and devotion. His dignity, his bearing, his countenance, his manner, the way of walking and talking, just the way he comported himself. He was like an ambassador of God in this material world. So you can imagine Prabhupada one time approached a man outside of a cosmetic shop and asked him to take him back to Godhead and give like 10 cents or something. And the man turned his back on Prabhupada, went into the cosmetic shop, and spent like $50, which in India is a lot of money, so many rupees, on cosmetics for his wife. Imagine he turns his back to Godhead, which could be a key to eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. And instead, he is enthusiastically spends 20 or 30 times the amount of money that it would have taken to get them back to Godhead on cosmetics, face creams, and herbs, and Botox for his wife. The Kali Yuga is full of such anomalies. Therefore, it's not surprising that when Prabhupada came to America, he targeted that category of people who are most likely to be open. In America, as you know, during the 60s, there was a lot of questioning of mores, questioning of standards, questioning of cultural values. Nothing was taken for granted. Everything was being examined. And when Prabhupada came to America, he spent some time with older people. He spent some time with the yogi crowd. He spent some time in salons where people discuss philosophy over their cups of tea. He spent some time giving lectures in college classes, but he ended up in the Bowery with the hippies, in the counterculture with the musicians and the bohemians, basically amongst the youth who were in revolt, who were questioning everything, and who were open to what Prabhupada had to offer. They hadn't gotten so far along in their life that they'd been set in the ways, they'd closed down, they'd shut down to anything new. They still had brains. They weren't just sitting in the park like so many septuagenarians and octogenarians with nothing more challenging to do than to play checkers. They were not just counting the days until death. They were actually at the beginning, they were at the entrance to their lives, still sifting through alternatives and trying to reach out for the best, most meaningful option in their lives. Those are the ones in whom Prabhupada's teachings took hold. Those are the persons that Prabhupada planted the seeds. And there was a good result, considering that they were open, they were inquisitive, that they had rejected things which their previous generation had taken for granted. And then on the other side, the extraordinary potency of Srila Prabhupada, the immediacy of his presence, his demeanor, his posture, his presence, those two things came together like a potent man and a fertile woman. And there was conception took place, and that byproduct of the bona fide spiritual master and the sincere disciples became known as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It came out of a sense of mercy, came out of the bliss of Krishna conscious. Devotees used to publish posters in those days that said, "Stay high forever." And it also entailed a considerable amount of tolerance on Prabhupada's part. When his hippie disciples first started gravitating towards him, first coming around, they were inquisitive, they were curious about the philosophy, and they were open to receiving it, but they were unused to doing anything physical. Most of Prabhupada's early disciples had been born with silver spoons in their mouths. They came from upper middle class families, and they weren't used to doing physical work, cooking, cleaning. They didn't know what the word even meant. And of course, they've been taking drugs and been promiscuous, living a very undisciplined life. So Prabhupada showed his tolerance by cleaning up after them, feeding them, giving a lecture, leading kirtans, which in those days, the kirtan would run for 45 minutes or so. Can you imagine after cooking and giving an hour lecture and giving an hour kirtan, an old man, then everyone just walks out the door and then he's left alone to clean up. And he did that day after day after day, till finally they became purified enough that they got it. We shouldn't just dump. We're getting the most valuable philosophy. We're getting access to the most antique and magnificent culture in the world. Prabhupada's come halfway across the world in his old age, and he shouldn't have to be our mate in addition to everything else. They finally got it, and they began to clean up after him. But in the beginning, if Prabhupada hadn't shown tolerance, if he'd lost it, if he'd taken him to task and said, "You guys are eating, filling your face, stuffing yourself. Why don't you pick up a broom?" Prabhupada never lost it. He never lost it. He never came to the end of his rope. He simply gave them as much slack as they needed until the light bulb went out. It dawned on them. You're not supposed to just take, but the real fruit of the knowledge, the real harvest will come when you give back. Always remember, never forget, what you give is what you get. You want love, you got to give love, give love away. Always remember, never forget, what you give is what you get. You want love, you got to give love, give love away. Finally occurred to them when they reach a certain level of purity that the fruit of the teachings is only going to manifest if they give back, if they take some of the burden off of Prabhupada and do some of the menial labor. And when that happened, they started to make advancement by spiritual, they started to make advancement by leaps and bounds. Now, that's what happened in America and India. Kind of a different scenario played out. There's the story, one devotee, Prabhupada said to make life memories. You couldn't so much go out into the streets and sell books as easily as you could in America. And so Prabhupada chalked out a program where devotees would go to industrialists, entrepreneurs, well-to-do people, and enlist them in the life membership program. They'd give 1,111 rupees, and they'd be a membership, and the membership benefits including books and the right to stay for 3 days at any temple anywhere in the world without charge. The story is told about one devotee, Indian devotee, went out all day, met so many people. Nobody wanted to become a life member. He hadn't eaten all day. He was hungry. He was thirsty. He was frustrated. He didn't have anything to show for a whole day out. And India's not like America. If you're taking public transportation in a city like Bombay, it's just hellish. It's just hellish. Crowded conditions, pollution, impoliteness, rudeness, no food, no prasadam, no life members. Said the devotee got back. In those days, devotees were much more familiar with Prabhupada. He threw his beanbag on the table and told Prabhupada, I quit. I quit. And Prabhupada said, okay, let me just put one thing before you. You think it's tough for you. There are Americans who did just what you did. You're Indian. You're used to the subway. You're used to crowded conditions. You're used to food being sometimes unavailable. This is what it means to be Indian. You know, Indians automatically know more tolerance. They get more opportunities to build up their tolerance muscle than Americans. The heat, the mosquitoes, the rudeness, the crowded conditions, lack of prasadam. This isn't anything new for you. Now, how about your god brothers from America? They never had any inconvenience. They always had food available at the snap of a finger. They never had to put up with excessive heat or excessive cold or mosquitoes. The conditions aren't particularly crowded. They didn't have to travel by public transportation. They all had their own cars. There were no monsoons. There was no foreign language to put up with. And yet, look to your left and look to your right at these American boys and girls who are dealing with the same frustrations you have and going on and being persistent. So at that moment, the Indian devotee relented. He smiled sheepishly. He picked up his beads, walked out, went looking for prasad. Without tolerance, you're not going to be able to make it in the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even Balaram himself, even Nityananda, I told you about the pair of missionaries, Haridas Thakur and Nityananda. They were going out every day, going from door to door, falling like a stick on the ground, begging people, normal people, ordinary people, working people, to chant Hare Krishna. They, in the course of their travels throughout the city of Navadvip, they intersected on several occasions these two brothers named Jagai and Madai. They were drunkards, they were bullies, they had performed every crime in the book. They spent their whole day singing, drinking, and singing drunken songs and robbing people and beating people up. They had terrorized the entire city of Navadvip. Nityananda thought, if I can convert them, Lord Chaitanya will be so glorified. Haridas Thakur said, I don't think that's worth the risk. Haridas Thakur could see that, yeah, if these guys became devotees, it would be amazing. Thousands of people would be interested in Krishna consciousness. But he didn't see, he thought it was quite dangerous. He said, it's, I'm not sure the risk is worth the benefit, because in approaching these people, they may very well kill us. They've killed before and they'll kill again. So Haridas Thakur advised Nityananda not to do it. So you're going to get, there's going to be a whole can of worms here. But Nityananda went ahead and approached Madai, and Madai was so angry. He was so angry, he took the pot of liquor from which he was drinking, a clay pot, and he threw it, and it crashed against Nityananda's head, caused a deep gash and bleeding. And Nityananda did not get angry. He did not get upset. He simply folded his hands with blood pouring down his head, and he begged with folded palms. He begged Madai, please chant Hare Krishna. And not right away Madai, but his brother Jagai noticed the tolerance, the equanimity, the poise with which Nityananda absorbed the blow to his head, the blood, and yet still exuded mercy, compassion, tolerance, and even happiness. At that point, Jagai was convinced, and he bowed down, and he was pulling, he's down on the ground, he's pulling his brother. You should bow down too. This is extraordinary. This is something, this is world change. He's bowed down, but Madai wouldn't do it. Madai was still puffing out his feathers and showing aggression, threatening further violence on Nityananda. Nityananda was meek and mild until such time as Lord Chaitanya arrived at the scene with his Sudarshan chakra, and Lord Chaitanya was really, really angry. He was going to kill Madai. Then Madai bowed down and asked for forgiveness. But the liberation, transformation of first Jagai and then Madai came about only because of the tolerance of Lord Nityananda. If you dip into that ocean of tolerance, which is exhibited by such devotees as Prabhupada and Haridas Thakur and Nityananda, you will be irresistible to Krishna. Nothing we could do can get us to Krishna. But there are certain qualities that we can develop in the course of our devotional careers, which will draw Krishna to us. We can't capture Krishna, but what we can do is by following the orders of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the previous acharyas, we can develop such qualities within ourselves that Krishna wants to capture us. And that's the way back home, back to Godhead. That's it for today. Now I'm eager and excited about seeing what comments you've all offered here on the Facebook page. Leelavati says, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Brent says, Krishna stays consistent, but for lifetimes we have been insistent in being resistant. I like that. Krishna stays consistent, but for lifetimes we have been insistent in being resistant. And Leah has a little two-line poem here. The urging is surging, but we're purging the urging. Nice, nice. The urging is surging, but we're purging the urging. Vaibhavi joined with some heart emojis there. More from Brent. There is no need for extra recreation and play when you eat, dance, chant, and hear transcendental philosophy every day. Nice. There is no need for extra recreation and play when you eat, dance, chant, and hear transcendental philosophy every day. And here's more. You can talk about sports and other mundane topics of all sorts, or you can talk about Krishna, of course. All the information is there in the purports. What you watch and hear every day will surely come out in what you do and say. You can talk about sports and other mundane topics of all sorts, or you can talk about Krishna, of course. All the information is there in the purports. What you watch and hear every day will surely come out in what you do or say. Very nice. And Britta from Ogden comes in with Haribol and Hare Krishna. Ram Kishore. He says, hope to see you in New Vrindavan next weekend at the conference. No, unfortunately. I wasn't I wasn't planning on going to that. Uh, Britta says, beautiful image of ISKCON and the child of a master and his students. Thank you. Kurt Gordon from the Ananda Groove Band, and often a diner here at the lunch hour at Govinda's Cafe, says, I love spiritual hippies. My Bobby says, I think she's talking about me. She says, when I first met you, you hardly spoke. I chatted unlimitedly and you were silent. When you became Krishna conscious, you couldn't stop talking. I think I might be unrecognizable from that boy who first met a devotee in 1970 on the streets of Australia. I mentioned I was mildly living in a state of mild depression in those days. But I don't think I'm depressed now. I think I'm completely happy. I've told several people this week that I'm going to be 78 in October, and yet I've never been happier in my life. So thank you all for putting up with me. Thank you for joining our forum Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and letting me talk on and on and on interminably. Appreciate you. Appreciate Prabhupada. Appreciate devotional service. Appreciate chanting. Appreciate prasadam. Appreciate festivals. Appreciate life. Appreciate all the students that come, as you see in the background. Appreciate the Mormons. Appreciate my wife above and beyond everybody else. Appreciate the devotees who help us out in the kitchen and greeting guests. Full of appreciation. Grateful. Love my life. I wish the same for all of you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.